I think we were getting more into the
Hindu.
Hindu. There we go.
The Puranas present an elaborate mythical cosmography. The old tripartite universe persists, but it is modified. There are 3 levels: heaven, earth, and the netherworld. But the first and the last are further subdivided into vertical layers.
Okay. Multiple layers of both underworld and heaven. We would identify with that there is multiple layers of heaven, and that the underworld not only has one compartment for the dead, but that there's another compartment below that for unclean spirits and rebellious angels, right? But just a little mixed up. In this one, they have it sitting on elephants, which are sitting on turtles. And I remember reading that, depending on who you asked, some would say that there's just the one big turtle, and then the others would say it's just infinite turtles. It's just turtles below turtles below turtles. Which I don't say we would ascribe to. I don't see any scriptural basis for this understanding.
That's so weird.
Which it's hilarious because I've actually seen somebody that I thought was joking. You know, you see the anti-flat Earth memes going around saying, "Oh, the flat Earthers believe the Earth is on a turtle," and somebody will say, "Well, what's under the turtle?" Somebody else said, "Oh, just infinite turtles." There was actually people that believed that in the Hindu cosmology.
Even though they have a netherworld that they talk about, it's like, you know, again, this is what we introduced at the beginning of the show for all the audience watching. It's pieces of what God has given to us through his prophets. But those pieces are then elaborated, stretched, or diminished in certain ways so that you never get a true, accurate picture from cultures that worship false gods. Because they, like the Greeks talked about a few slides earlier, things are observable. So the ancient Hindus could go up to, you know, the tallest mountains they have in their region and see the earth extends in every direction equally. And they know they're not on a ball. They never would have suspected they're actually on a ball. But they would see clearly, oh, okay, we live in here, and then we know that we have a dome over us, according to our theology. Even their false gods sharing that with them. So it's like the enemy just gave them pieces of the truth so that they could have a sense of grounding enough so that the gods are validated and claiming that they're responsible for that cosmology, that the people could see it. But then, of course, they lead them away to be worshipped on their own as opposed to worshiping the creator of heaven and earth properly.
I was going to say, I got a little bit of tidbit about the Hindu while we're still on it. So the actual serpent that's in there is known as Shishanaga. It translates to he who remains. So if anybody has seen the Loki series on Disney, the new bad guy that's coming up is known as Kang the Conqueror. And he's also known in that series as he who remains. And he sits at the end of time. And the lore around Shishanaga is when he uncoils, it slows down time. And when he coils up, it's the end of the world. But he is the one after the destruction of all things that he is the one who remains. So it's really funny that in the new Disney Plus series where they have the Kang the Conqueror, this is like a Nimrod figure, right, who travels through time. At the end of this, like this multiversal thing, he was the one that controlling the timeline, where it was like an Ouroboros. So he would cut off any of the branches that didn't bring to his creation. So he was, cutting the branches off so that it was a continuous loop of time. So he was the one who remains at the end of an Ouroboros. It's a really interesting, like that they tied all that stuff together in that Loki series.
It's like a snake eating its own tail.
Because they even got in this depiction the snake eating itself. But yeah, brother, Marvel movies are like watching a history lesson on the so-called mythologies of ancient cultures, aren't they?
Yeah, it's wild because of the comic character, the original comics that created these stories, they were all very, very much aware of other belief systems, and they just infused them into the comics with the naive American kids not realizing the difference. But I mean, I love that you mentioned that, WesBlaze, because think about this. There it is. Look at this. So this wonderful depiction here. Most of us may have seen the Thor movies that Marvel put out for the last 10 years and some of the depictions therein. Look at this and just think about what you saw in the movies versus this. I'm an amateur writer. I've got these books that I'm writing about the 100 years later with the flood of Noah. And, I think about plots and world building and all this character detail and how you can intertwine. Like my book about Noah has 35 main characters because it's a massive trilogy. It encompasses Nephilim and rebellious angels and Noah's family. And if I was working with this as a part of my source material, I would have created its own entire world of movies that I could have made off of the Norse cosmology, with all these different realms, with all the different people living there and the different ways that could be interacting and drama created and all this stuff. So to look at what their source material was and then look at the movies they've given us, for me, from a writer's perspective, it's very clear to me. It's not innocent, fanciful writing for the purpose of building based on a cosmology, it's directly attributing and putting in all these themes and streamlining a story to tell a certain narrative to glorify Ra and Osiris and the gods, because they have all this other source material they could have worked with, but instead they did certain things. They even added Talos in there in the first Thor movie,
Sure.
which is the guardian of Odin. So like there's all these ways they could have gone with it and built this amazing storyline from the Norse cosmology, but instead they streamlined it to this horrible story that's just a glorification of Ra, Osiris, and their automaton bodyguard Talos.
Yeah. Fascinating. It's so connected.
Yeah.
And real quick,
wild.
while I'm thinking about it, Sean, who would you say, like, you got Odin, Cronus is in there, I believe, too, and then Thor. Thor would be a representation of Nimrod, no? And then
Yeah.
Odin is Satan?
Yeah,
Isn't
Odin's
that
the Ra
interesting?
character, and then
Yep.
Thor
He's
would
got
be
one eye.
the Helios or the Apollyon or the Osiris character.
There you go.
That's why he has to lose an eye.
Yep, exactly. Reminds me of
He's
that
the
passage in
Assyrian.
Zechariah.
Yeah.
Very good stuff. Loving it so far, gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you. Hindu Vedic cosmology, right? The Vedic was a separate kind of religion aside of Hinduism, but above Earth, there are 7 layers in heaven, at the summit of which is the world of Brahman, Brahmaloka. There are also 7 layers below Earth, the location of hells inhabited by serpents and demons, from the Encyclopedia Britannica. So I remember your NASA episode that I was a guest on Investigating Babylon, and you broke down the Brahman situation. Everybody go check out that Investigating Babylon series. Can't say it enough. There's no wonder where Dante Inferno got his idea of the of 7 layers of hell, right, of the underworld. This is just ancient Hinduism, Vedicism.
Yeah, and is, to my knowledge, wasn't Dante Catholic?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, so then we also have George Lemaitre, several hundred years later, a Catholic priest, coming up with Big Bang cosmology, which is literally Hindu Vedic cosmology.
There you go. Yep, that's where the Big Bang originated from these guys too, even though they held a tripartite enclosed cosmology as well, and even had 7 heavens. They still believed that it originated from nothing, right? It was
That's what I was going to say.
self-created.
Is this the first one that that we've looked at that actually did have seven layers of the
No,
firmament?
the Babylonian.
Oh yeah,
did.
yeah.
I want to
Okay.
say one others did, but yeah, we'll touch on that later. Look at some more historical evidence of believers of the Hebrew faith that also ascribe to 7 layers. But if you would read this, Daniel.
Sure. The Ananta Shesha is the cosmic serpent of the Hindu mythology. He supports the weight of the world. Shesha is sometimes portrayed as either a 5-headed or 7-headed serpent.
How about that? So yeah, we made the connection to this world serpent in so many different cosmologies to the Leviathan of Scripture, and I can't help but remember Psalm 74:14, which says, "You broke the heads, plural, of Leviathan in pieces and gave him his food to the people inhabiting the wilderness," or in the Septuagint, as it says, "You gave him his food to the Ethiopian peoples," which, even though it's in a past tense statement, I would call that proleptic language of a future event that has not happened yet. But nonetheless, the connection here is that they portrayed this world serpent as sometimes having multiple heads, and this version of Psalm 74 seems to say that Leviathan has multiple heads, like the Hydra, right?
Yep.
Could be. Not sure. We shall see.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Is this
Well,
the
we're going to
first,
get the best view of it, though.
Yeah.
Is this the first multiverse that we've looked at? Is this the first one that had more like a multiverse understanding?
Go ahead,
Well,
Sean.
Vedic Hindu cosmology as a whole is the origin of the multiverse concept.
There you go. Yep.
So that's where that all comes from, which is no coincidence that modern day astrophysicists like Neil deGrasse Tyson and some of these other people at NASA are promoting the actual string theory for the last 20 years, which leads into a multiverse concept.
What are the rules of quantum physics telling us? They're telling us that multiple universes could be popping in and out of existence, and we are just one of them.
Gotcha.
Each one with a slightly different law of physics.
Okay.
So there's no limit on how many of these universes there could be. Let's say there's infinite.
In the Vedic cosmology, they believe in that great ocean again, and they believe that from this because just how chaotic the ocean is, they believe that it was like whirlpools of all of these different multiverses. Basically, is where they get that idea. It's all from that great ocean again. That we're that chaos, the tohu abohu or whatever from Genesis that we see again.
Okay. Interesting.